It was a quiet evening, the kind where the world outside seemed distant and muted. The 23-year-old narrator had settled into his small living room, a cup of tea warming his hands, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound breaking the silence. He was used to these moments of solitude, peaceful, predictable, but tonight, that calm would shatter in the most unexpected way. A soft knock echoed from the front door. Slightly startled, he set down his cup, assuming it was a neighbor or a delivery. But when he opened the door, he found not one, but 4 women standing there, all in their early 40s, exuding a quiet confidence that immediately commanded attention. They smiled at him, not in a formal, polite way, but with a playful warmth that sent a subtle shiver through him. "We've claimed you tonight," one of them said, her voice teasing yet gentle, as if she were offering him entry into a world he didn't yet understand. The narrator blinked, caught between confusion and curiosity. Their presence felt almost cinematic, like the kind of surreal moment you read about but never expected to experience in your own apartment. As they stepped inside, the narrator noticed the small, intimate details that made the encounter strangely intoxicating. The subtle fragrance of perfume, a blend of soft florals and warm vanilla, lingered in the air, mixing with the faint aroma of his tea. Their movements were graceful but unforced, each step and gesture radiating quiet self-assurance. One brushed past his shoulder as she passed him, her fingers grazing lightly, sending an unexpected warmth through his chest. Another's hand lingered near the doorknob longer than necessary, her glance meeting his with a hint of mischief. The women seated themselves on the sofa and chairs, naturally arranging themselves around him. He felt a flutter of nervousness at how close they sat, the soft warmth of their bodies just a whisper away. One leaned slightly forward, resting her hand gently on the edge of the coffee table, her fingertips brushing against his when he reached for his cup. The narrator noticed the tiny details, how the light caught the strands of their hair, the way their smiles softened the lines of experience etched into their faces, the subtle confidence in their posture that only came from years of life lived fully. Their conversation began with playful banter, teasing him about how he looked when surprised, how quiet he normally was, and what he was doing alone on such a night. But even in the joking, there was an undercurrent of attentiveness, a focus that made him feel seen in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. His heartbeat quickened not from fear, but from the strange, warm sense of being desired, appreciated, and included all at once. By the end of the evening's first half hour, the narrator realized something extraordinary. This night, entirely unexpected, was already shaping itself into a memory that would linger. These women, older, confident, playful, and human in ways that drew him out of his shell, had entered his quiet life and disrupted it beautifully. The air was charged with potential, and though he didn't yet know what claimed truly meant, he felt a gentle pull toward a night that promised connection, laughter, and something entirely new. The room felt warmer now, the air carrying a subtle mix of the evening's quiet hum and the lingering presence of the 4 women. They had made themselves comfortable, moving with the ease of people who belonged, even if the narrator still felt like a visitor in his own space. He sank into the sofa, half flustered, half entranced, aware of the slight weight of the cushion shifting as one of them leaned against its arm beside him. Their conversation was light-hearted at first, playful teasing about his habits, his shy smiles, the awkward way he sipped his tea. But beneath the laughter, there was an electric tension, unspoken yet undeniable. Each touch, each glance, carried more meaning than the words themselves. A hand brushed past his arm as one woman adjusted her seat, lingering a fraction too long. Another leaned forward to emphasize a joke, their knees nearly touching, creating an almost tangible warmth between them. The narrator's chest tightened in ways he hadn't expected, a mix of nervousness and delight. He noticed the subtle contrasts among them. One had a warm, teasing energy, her fingers drumming lightly on the armrest near him, eyes sparkling with mischief. Another radiated quiet confidence, her posture upright yet relaxed, a gentle smile playing on her lips as she observed the conversation. A third's presence was soothing, almost maternal, the soft tone of her voice making him feel safe and noticed. And the fourth, the most enigmatic, leaned slightly into the circle, her gaze lingering on him in a way that made him acutely aware of every small movement, every brush of hair, every tilt of her head. As they joked, the narrator felt a strange combination of embarrassment and thrill. He found himself leaning in slightly, drawn to the warmth and attentiveness surrounding him. Each laugh shared, each subtle touch, felt deliberate, a dance of closeness without crossing boundaries. He caught himself noticing how the soft fabric of their clothes brushed against him when they shifted, the faint scent of perfume that seemed to follow them with every movement, the way the evening light highlighted the silver streaks in their hair, hints of experience that only made them more magnetic. There were moments when one of the women would pause mid-sentence, eyes meeting his for a heartbeat longer than socially necessary. In those seconds, the world seemed to shrink. The laughter and chatter faded into the background, leaving only the silent, unspoken communication between them. A soft smile, a barely noticeable lean closer, the light touch of a finger grazing his hand. These became the language of the evening, a slow, teasing conversation of proximity and attention. Even as the teasing continued, the narrator felt himself relaxing, letting go of the initial nervousness. He realized that the tension wasn't about discomfort but about connection, the kind that drew him in, made him aware of his own heart and thoughts in ways he hadn't experienced before. The warmth, the laughter, the subtle intimacies of touch and glance, all of it wove a delicate web around him, inviting him to participate in something entirely new. The playful, intoxicating closeness of four women who had, in their own confident way, staked a claim on his attention. By the end of this half hour, he was flushed, exhilarated, and more alert than ever to the subtle currents in the room. What had begun as a simple evening at home had transformed into a space filled with curiosity, excitement, and gentle desire, and he knew, though he didn't fully understand it yet, that this night was only just beginning. After the initial playfulness had settled into a comfortable rhythm, the room's atmosphere subtly shifted. The laughter softened, and the teasing gave way to a quieter, more intimate conversation. The narrator, still in his early 20s, noticed it immediately. Something about the way the women's expressions softened, the way their voices took on a warmer, more reflective tone. It was as if, behind their confident exteriors, each of them carried stories they had only hinted at before. One of the women leaned back, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips, and began to speak about her childhood in the neighborhood. Her words were gentle, tinged with nostalgia and vulnerability. Another chimed in, sharing a recent challenge she had faced at work, and for the first time, the narrator heard hesitation in her confident tone. The room seemed to shrink around him, the four women no longer just playful companions but real, complex humans revealing themselves piece by piece. The narrator felt a pang of protectiveness mixed with admiration. He realized he was witnessing a side of them that few people saw, strength intertwined with tenderness, confidence shadowed by vulnerability. He couldn't help but notice the small, intimate gestures that accompanied their stories. The brief brush of a hand across a shoulder, a hand resting lightly on his knee as she emphasized a point, fingers brushing in fleeting moments that sent warmth through him. Every movement seemed deliberate yet effortless, a silent language of care and trust. Their eyes met his often, lingering just slightly longer than normal, conveying unspoken understanding. One woman tilted her head, her gaze softening as she laughed gently at a memory, and he felt a strange mix of admiration and longing. Another reached out almost imperceptibly, letting her hand hover near his as if inviting connection, and he caught himself instinctively leaning slightly closer, heart thudding in quiet awareness. The conversation deepened. They spoke about their hopes, regrets, and the small victories that had defined their lives. He shared snippets of his own experiences, tentative at first, then with more ease as their warmth and attentiveness made him feel safe. The interplay of their voices, the soft laughter, and the occasional pause created a rhythm that was both comforting and intoxicating. The narrator felt the slow pulse of emotional intimacy wrapping around him, subtle yet undeniably powerful. He noticed details he hadn't before, the way a woman's fingers twisted lightly in her lap when she was nervous, the small catch in another's voice when recalling a bittersweet memory, the warmth of a hand resting lightly on his as they laughed together. Each gesture, each glance, was loaded with quiet significance, drawing him further into their shared space. By the end of this half hour, the narrator realized the night had changed in an unexpected way. This wasn't just playful teasing anymore. It was emotional connection, a slow unveiling of self and trust. The women's quiet vulnerabilities had stirred something in him, awareness, care, and an awakening desire to be part of this delicate, unfolding bond. In that living room, laughter had softened into something deeper. The first threads of intimacy, the beginnings of trust, and the unmistakable spark of something that could grow into a tender, slow-burning connection. As the evening wore on, the room felt warmer, the air heavier with an unspoken tension that wasn't quite playful anymore. The four women, each with their own distinct energy, continued to surround the narrator, their presence at once comforting and overwhelming. He had grown more relaxed, laughing easily at their jokes and teasing. Yet beneath that ease, a subtle awareness began to creep in, hesitation, born from the strange intensity of being so closely observed, cared for, and admired. One of the women reached over to brush a stray strand of hair from his face. The touch was light, almost casual, yet it sent a ripple of warmth through him, making his chest tighten. Another adjusted her position on the sofa, her leg brushing gently against his. He froze for a moment, aware of every heartbeat, every nerve suddenly alert. The tactile closeness was electrifying, but it also reminded him how young and inexperienced he was compared to these confident, poised women. His mind raced as he tried to interpret the gestures. Were they just playful? Or was there something more? Something he wasn't supposed to fully understand yet? Every lingering glance, every soft touch, felt like an invitation and a test at the same time. The women, too, seemed aware of his hesitation. They didn't push, but there was a deliberate subtlety in their movements. A hand resting lightly on his arm, a knee brushing his during laughter, a tilt of the head that invited connection. Each action conveyed affection, yet respected boundaries, making his hesitation feel natural rather than awkward. The narrator's inner conflict deepened when one of the women, the most enigmatic of the group, leaned closer to him, her gaze steady and kind. She spoke softly, her words almost teasing but carrying a weight of understanding. He felt drawn in, aware of the warmth radiating from her and the collective energy of all four women surrounding him. At the same time, he worried about overstepping, about misreading signals, about the social norms he had always been careful to observe. The pull between desire and restraint created a tension that was almost tangible. He noticed small, intimate details that made him even more aware of the moment. The subtle scent of her perfume mixing with the warmth of the room, the gentle rise and fall of their chests as they laughed or listened, the soft brush of a fingertip along his hand. Each detail made it harder to focus on anything else, yet the weight of responsibility, of respecting their intentions and his own boundaries, kept him on edge. As they continued to share stories and joke with one another, the narrator realized that this hesitation was not just his own. It was part of the evening's rhythm, a delicate balance between closeness and distance, playfulness and respect. He understood that these moments, hands brushing lightly, shoulders leaning into one another, eyes lingering, were as much about connection as they were about testing trust. By the end of this section of the night, he felt acutely aware of the emotional layers surrounding him. The women's confidence, their subtle vulnerability, and their gentle attentions created a magnetic pull that both thrilled and intimidated him. He was caught between the desire to lean in, to fully embrace the warmth and affection offered, and the instinct to pause, to respect the fragile, delicate tension that held the evening together. It was in this hesitation, this quiet awareness of boundaries and longing, that the night's slow-burn intimacy deepened, setting the stage for the playful yet emotionally charged connections yet to come. The night had settled into a rhythm that was both comfortable and charged. The playful teasing of earlier hours had softened into a more intimate game, a gentle competition for attention, smiles, and proximity. The narrator, still in his early 20s, felt the tug-of-war of subtle desire all around him, a mix of warmth, tension, and exhilarating uncertainty. One woman leaned closer while laughing, her hand brushing briefly against his as she reached for a drink. Another leaned back, her shoulder just grazing his, her eyes twinkling with amusement at his flustered expression. He found himself caught between delight and embarrassment, his heart racing with every small touch. Each gesture was innocent, yet layered with meaning, an invitation to lean in, to notice, to respond. The women's movements became more fluid, almost like a dance around him. They shifted positions on the sofa and chairs, closing the gaps between them, each subtly seeking the narrator's attention. One draped her arm casually across the back of the sofa, her fingers brushing his shoulder as she laughed at a joke. Another leaned forward, her knee nudging his ever so slightly, her gaze locking with his for a heartbeat longer than usual. He noticed the soft warmth of their bodies, the delicate scent of their perfumes mingling in the air, the subtle brush of fabric against skin, all amplifying the charged yet playful intimacy in the room. Laughter became a shared language of connection. Jokes were punctuated with glances, smiles, and fleeting touches, each moment reinforcing a sense of closeness. The narrator found himself leaning in more naturally, drawn to the energy that radiated from them. There was no pressure, no rush, just a gentle pull, an invitation to inhabit the space fully, to allow himself to feel seen, appreciated, and quietly desired. He also noticed the differences in how each woman interacted with him. One carried a confident, teasing energy, leaning in to whisper playful observations about him. Another radiated warmth and calm, offering quiet smiles and soft touches that felt protective and reassuring. The third had a magnetic charm, her laughter ringing like a melody that drew him closer, while the fourth remained enigmatic, her subtle gestures, like brushing a hand lightly across his arm or holding eye contact, carrying a quiet intensity that made him acutely aware of every moment. Even the small details heightened the intimacy. The way their hair fell into the soft glow of the living room light, the faint shiver of contact when fingers brushed unintentionally, the warmth that lingered after a touch had ended. These gestures, though innocent, created a tantalizing closeness that made the narrator aware of his own heartbeat, his own desires, and the extraordinary trust and playfulness that had developed in such a short time. By the end of this phase of the evening, the playful intimacy had escalated into a delicate web of connection. The narrator felt exhilarated, nervous, and deeply attuned to the women around him. Each laugh, each glance, each touch was a thread weaving him into their shared space. What had begun as a simple, unexpected visit had grown into a slow-burning, emotionally charged moment, an intoxicating dance of attention, affection, and subtle desire that left him anticipating the next turn in their night together. The playful teasing and gentle closeness of the evening had reached a new, quieter rhythm. The laughter had softened into a comfortable hum, and the room felt charged with a warmth that went beyond mere physical proximity. The narrator, still in his early 20s, felt the weight of the moment pressing in, not as pressure, but as an invitation to share, to connect, and to be fully present. One of the women leaned forward, resting her hand lightly on his, her fingers brushing his thumb in a slow, deliberate gesture. "We like having you here," she said softly, her eyes meeting his with a sincerity that made his chest tighten. He felt the electric warmth of that simple touch, the intimacy of being seen and acknowledged without pretense. For a moment, words failed him. The room seemed to shrink, leaving only the subtle pulse of shared breath and the quiet energy between them. Encouraged by her openness, the narrator began to speak, hesitantly at first, about small, personal truths, moments of insecurity, fleeting joys, and little victories he rarely shared with anyone. The women listened intently, their eyes never leaving him, their gestures a careful balance of encouragement and gentle presence. One reached out, letting her fingers lightly rest on his shoulder, a gesture that was both comforting and intimate. Another leaned closer, laughing softly at a story while her hand brushed his arm, sending warmth spiraling through him. The confessions deepened as the night progressed. Each woman shared something personal, small vulnerabilities, moments of regret, dreams they had tucked away. There was no judgment, only soft understanding and genuine attention. The narrator felt a profound sense of trust building, a realization that this moment was about more than playful teasing. It was about emotional connection and mutual recognition. At one point, their hands found his naturally, resting briefly on his knee, shoulder, or wrist. He noticed the subtle ways they communicated affection. A lingering gaze, a gentle squeeze of his hand, a reassuring smile. Each touch was laden with meaning, a silent conversation that complemented their words. The narrator's own nervousness melted into warmth, and he began to reciprocate, offering small touches, leaning closer during conversation, and allowing himself to meet their eyes in longer, more deliberate glances. The room felt suspended in a delicate balance of trust, attention, and desire. Each laugh, each soft touch, each shared glance wove him further into the intricate tapestry of their evening. For the first time, he allowed himself to acknowledge how deeply he was drawn to their warmth, humor, and quiet strength. And yet, the affection remained gentle and respectful, non-sexual but charged with connection. By the end of this part of the night, the emotional peak had arrived. The narrator felt a profound sense of intimacy. He was seen, appreciated, and understood. The four women, in turn, had revealed not just their playful sides but their authentic selves, creating a web of trust, attention, and mutual curiosity. The night was no longer just about playful teasing. It was about confessions, shared humanity, and the tender beginnings of love and understanding. In that warm, softly lit room, every glance, touch, and word had pulled them closer, leaving the narrator with a heart full of anticipation, connection, and quiet joy. As the night slowly drew to a close, the room felt suffused with a gentle warmth, the kind that lingers after laughter, shared stories, and the quiet acknowledgement of trust. The playful teasing and tender touches of earlier hours had softened into a sense of comfort and understanding. The narrator, still in his early 20s, sat amidst the four women, each in their early 40s, and realized that the night had transformed into something far deeper than he could have imagined. The women were calmer now, their movements unhurried, their laughter quieter but richer, carrying the resonance of genuine connection. One of them reached out to lightly brush his hand, a small gesture that spoke volumes about trust and care. Another leaned back, letting her head rest slightly on the sofa's arm, her eyes meeting his with a softness that made him aware of the subtle intimacy they had shared all evening. The air seemed charged not with tension, but with a lingering sense of belonging, of being seen, appreciated, and quietly cherished. They began to exchange quiet goodbyes, each gesture deliberate yet gentle. One woman rested a hand briefly on his shoulder, her thumb brushing softly, and whispered, "I'm glad you stayed tonight." Another leaned forward and tucked a stray strand of his hair behind his ear, her smile lingering in a way that made him feel both noticed and valued. Each action was small, yet filled with meaning, a culmination of the playful, teasing, and emotionally vulnerable moments that had unfolded. The narrator, in turn, responded with equal tenderness. He offered soft smiles, held their gazes a fraction longer, and allowed himself to mirror the warmth they had shown him. The shared touches, hands clasped briefly, shoulders brushing, arms leaning against him, had become natural, a comfortable language of care and connection. He realized that the night had given him a rare gift, the knowledge that emotional closeness and trust could be deeply fulfilling, even without the need for words or overt romance. As the final moments approached, the women rose to leave, each offering a small, lingering gesture. A hand pressed gently to his cheek, a hug that wrapped him in warmth, a soft glance that promised future encounters. The narrator felt a quiet sense of completion, a satisfying closure that left his heart full and his mind at ease. He knew that, though the night had been extraordinary, it was not about rushing or forcing feelings. It was about connection, intimacy, and mutual respect. The room, once vibrant with laughter and gentle teasing, was now calm. The hum of the night outside the window contrasted with the warmth still radiating from the living room. The narrator leaned back, reflecting on the evening. He realized that he had experienced a slow, careful unfolding of emotional intimacy, one that had allowed him to appreciate each woman's confidence, warmth, and vulnerability. He had felt seen, heard, and quietly cherished, and in return, he had offered his own openness and attentiveness. As the door closed behind the last visitor, the narrator felt the lingering warmth of the night settle around him. The memory of soft touches, shared laughter, and lingering glances remained vivid, leaving him with a deep sense of fulfillment and anticipation for future moments of connection. The night had ended, but the emotional bond, gentle, tender, and deeply human, would stay with him, a quiet testament to a night of playfulness, trust, and slow-burning intimacy.